Hey, what's up, Good Life? How are you guys doing today? Hope you're doing well. Today, I'm a little bit tired. It isn't that I didn't get a good number of hours of sleep last night. It just wasn't quality sleep. I don't know about you, but my dreams during this lockdown have been absolutely crazy. It isn't so much that the content has been weird, although at times that's been the case. It's that they've been so vivid and so memorable and so detailed that when you come out of the dream, it sticks with you during the day. Last night I had two very vivid dreams. The first one is that I was stuck on top of a mountain and I was with a bunch of people and I was the only one who wanted to go down the mountain. And people kept saying, just go ahead and go. Hop in your car and drive down the mountain. Well, I'm not a huge fan of heights. It isn't so much the heights that scare me, it'd be the fall and the very sudden stop at the bottom. So I'm not a huge fan of heights, but in this dream, I drove for about 100 feet, gave up, got out of the car and slid down the mountain on my rear end the rest of the way. Very vivid, detailed dream, but that's not the one that really stuck with me. The second dream was this. We were in our house and there was a storm raging outside. Strong storm, powerful storm, a lot of things going on. And both of those dreams sort of stuck with me. More on that in a second. And I started to think about, and I've noticed on the internet and social media, that I'm not alone in my dreams during this lockdown being very vivid, being very detailed, and being very memorable. It's all over the place. People are saying, why am I having such crazy dreams? What's going on? Well, experts tell us that it's not unusual during times of significant change for our dreams to get more vivid and a little more crazy. Well, why is that happening? Well, dreams can be very helpful for us. Looking back in time, it was very similar after 9/11. People started having very vivid and memorable dreams. But why do we do that? Well, it's our brain trying to deal with stress. It's our brain trying to process emotion. And I'd put to you, during this time, it's also that we are dealing with a lack of normal sensory input. We're in the same place a lot of the time, locked in our homes, around a lot of the same people, getting our work done, consuming some entertainment, whatever the case may be. We are lacking some of the normal movement and sensory input that we would normally get. And I think our brains are, trying to figure that out. So I'm not alone in the craziness of my dream. So let's go back to that storm dream. We're in the house. The storm is raging. It's going crazy, shaking the house nonstop. And everybody in the house seems real calm and they're not very fazed by it. But I'm not enjoying this dream at all, and I'm certainly not enjoying the storm in the dream. Trees are actually falling against our house, and we don't even have any trees in our yard. But here's what was weird. In the dream, the next morning, I went outside to check on the house, and the house hardly had a scratch. Not one window was broken, and not one tree was down. Now, there were some things that were damaged in the yard, like a fence in the backyard that has seen better days and probably needs to come down anyways. And so I woke up and I didn't think a whole lot more about it. But as I was contemplating what to share today on this 128, it brings to mind something that I think God would have us take away from this season. Near the end of the Sermon on the Mount, as Jesus is wrapping up this beautiful and epic sermon that he preached to his followers on the sides of the Sea of Galilee. In Matthew chapter 7, he gets to a point where he talks about two men and two houses and the storms that those men would face. Listen to what Jesus has to say in Matthew chapter 7. He says, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and they beat against the house. But it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and it beat against that house. And it fell, and great was the fall of it." Now, given the context of what Jesus is talking about, he's clearly talking about salvation, that there will come a storm in the life of every person when their life comes to an end and when they face the Lord on Judgment Day. And if their life is not built on Jesus Christ, great will be the fall of their life. It'll be eternal death. He is clearly talking about salvation, but I think we can take what Jesus is saying and even go a step deeper into it and just consider that it's also talking about evaluating the foundations of our lives, digging in and saying, is there anything in my life that's not bearing under the weight of the storms that God allows to come in? That fence in my backyard in this dream needed to come down. And in real life, that fence probably needs to come down. It's seen some better days. And maybe on the other side of this crisis, there will be some things in our lives that God removes, that God says, that's not as important as you thought it was. And that on the other side of this crisis, we'll go, I needed to deal with that a long time ago. And we'll see some positive benefits coming out of it. But I also know this, that we're going to come out of this with some losses that are very painful, whether that be loved ones who are sick, or jobs that we loved, or paying bills, which we have to do. We're going to face some losses as well. So all of us are going to sleep each night with a lot of questions on our mind, questions that our brains are trying to sort out in our dreams. And here's 2 questions that I'm facing in my own life. What is it going to look like when all this is done? What are going to be the aspects of our new normal that's different from what it was before we ever heard the words COVID-19? Well, that's one of them. The second thing is this, is that when is that going to happen? When are we going to get out of the lockdown? When are we going to get back to some normal rhythms of life? Will it be safe when we do it? So what's it going to look like, and when's it going to happen? And right now, I don't know. I have no idea what the answer to those questions are. And I don't think anybody knows the answers to those questions right now. If this has proven anything, the people we call experts know a lot less than they pretend to know. So what do we do between now and when those questions are answered? Well, I'm going to come back to what Jesus had to say. That until you know what storm is coming and until you know what that storm will reveal, all we can do is listen to what Jesus says and do what Jesus says. If we are doing that, we are building our life on the solid rock. So all I can do for me and my family and for me and our church is for us to be people who listen to what God has to say and do what God has to say, and trust that even though I don't know how those questions are going to be answered, I do know this, that what's going to happen on the other side of this crisis is exactly what God intends. And when this crisis is going to come to an end is exactly at the moment that God intends. And while I don't know the answers to all my questions, I may still have crazy dreams. I know that if I'm listening to what Jesus says, and I'm doing what Jesus says, and I'm leading my family and our church to do the same, then we're building our lives on a rock that never changes and never fails. If that's what we're doing, we can weather this time, no matter how crazy our dreams or our world end up being. Good Life, I hope that encourages you today. I hope it gives you renewed focus on who we are and who we've been called to be. People who listen and do what God has to say, to love enough to share the good news and share life, no matter what dreams or realities may come. I love you guys. I miss you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1:28.